My name is Brock, and this is the Dungeon Master's Toolkit podcast. On today's episode, I talk to Sean, and we talk mostly about professional game mastering. It's a very targeted discussion, and there's a lot of good insights for anybody who is interested in professional game mastering. Sean was also on an earlier episode, episode 70. So if you would like to check out more from Sean, go ahead and check out episode 70. And with that, let's jump into the episode. Welcome, everybody. Today I have Sean 4 with me, also known as Scene 4. Welcome, Sean.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, great to have you back. Today we wanted to have a little bit more of a targeted conversation around professional GMing. So, Sean, would you go ahead and tell us about how you got started in the professional scene?
Yes, professional GMing actually kind of fell in my lap. It was a friend of mine that I knew from my work in the theater, actually, by the name of Alejandro Te, who we had worked together before on a sort of interactive theatrical RPG project based on the story of the Cuban Revolution that he had been working on and is still working on and may see further productions. But it was the last theatrical project I worked on in the early spring, late winter of 2020. And we wrapped, our last performance was canceled because the lockdown began right basically that week. And as things progressed and it became clear that we were in this for the long haul, Tay began posting on his social media on like Facebook and Twitter that he was running these games, these RPG games, for like $10 a seat to make some extra cash during the pandemic. And they were filling. They were filling fast and they were filling to the brim. And he got to think that maybe there was something to this. And he and another colleague of mine, the name is Zach Berenstein, started putting together these games. And Tay asked me, like, hey, I've got a bunch of people who are like chomping at the bit to play RPGs online, virtually. Like, we're all cooped up in our homes. And I've got this overflow, and I think you would be really good at this. And I said, sure, okay, I'll start. So I started, we basically joined along, and we found that there was enough of a market for it that they ended up putting together a collective of these people. Like, he started recruiting all these people that he knew, and we started like building something, and eventually it got incorporated as Tabletail Games, which we ran for about 2 years, sort of building a clientele. And after about 2 years, Tay and Zach, who were the original founders of Tabletail, they wanted to move on. They had other projects in hand that they wanted to move on to, but I was still doing the Pro GM thing. And we had seen lots of other like Pro GMs come and go to the collective. And so around about the end of 2022, Tabletail Games dissolved, and many of its professional GMs all went their separate ways, except for me, which left me with a cultivated clientele of people who like loved the service we were providing, and now I was the only guy who was still doing it. So pretty much the whole time along the way, I feel like I haven't had to do any of the real work, because Tabletail Games, they did the marketing, they did a lot of like the sort of collective and like programming and the clientele stuff, and I was really just sort of running the games in the background. Like occasionally I would pitch like events and stuff, and I did some ad work for them sort of on my social media, on YouTube and TikTok. I made a few videos for them, but largely I feel like the pro GMing gig has fallen into my lap time and time again, and I've just sort of found myself here, which makes me sometimes feel like I'm not the best person to like help people get into it from the start, but I have learned a ton about cultivating and sustaining a business, because now it is what I do. It is my full-time job. I mean, it's actually less hours than a full-time job, which is awesome, but it is what I do. It's how I make my money, how I sustain myself.
What is the like hourly or like the amount of work that you put into this gig then? Like how much does that take up out of your week?
It depends on the week. Like this week, for example, I am booked solid. I am playing a game every single night of the week. And that's not true of every week. I would say I'm averaging probably around 5 sessions a week. And I know there are people who are doing more, but I would absolutely burn out. I hear stories of people who are running like 9 or 12 sessions a week, and I would not be able to sustain that. So why do I usually do like my maximum is basically I could do 8 sessions. I'll do like one double header and then you can book me every night of the week. I think that's probably critical mass, and I don't think I could sustain that forever. Most sessions are 3 to 3.5 hours. I do sometimes solo sessions, which are less because you can get through with a smaller table. You can get through more stuff faster. And then each game, I would say I'm prepping, depending on the game that I'm running, probably an hour for each. So it's maybe, if I'm thinking it's 20 to 30 hours a week. And then to supplement that, I'm doing, I guess, I'm also working all the time on my social media presence, which is how I sort of, it's one of the ways that I raise awareness and get people like sort of interested in maybe playing with me as I talk about GMing online. So maybe if you count my social media presence, it's a full-time job.
It's probably a little bit more fun than like a regular 9 to 5 though, right?
God, yes, absolutely 100%. Like I've never had a true 9 to 5. I did some temp work right out of school that might qualify, and I worked retail at a board game store, which isn't exactly like I've always been drawn to like sort of I want to talk to people about games. Like that's what I want to do with my life. And like I want to play games, I want to run games, I want to talk about games. Here I am. But I don't think I could ever do like your standard 9 to 5. Like even thoughts about where I take my career from here, there's no way that I would parlay this into like your standard like corporate marketing gig or anything like that.
So in those sessions that you're doing, are these like recurring campaigns or one shots or what kind of a structure do you have?
Yeah, we found at Table Tale that without a doubt the best thing to be doing is not short campaigns, but like I would say sustainable length campaigns. So we started doing one shots. That was where we started. And then we got to the idea of like, okay, so what if we are running sort of weekly drop in campaigns? And those worked pretty well. And we found that like the best thing, well, like my first real big hit was I think I ran the Extra Life Infernal Machine Rebuild, which is kind of a 5 session mini campaign. And that was like really successful. And so we were like, must be something to that. I think what people really want is they want to play a campaign that's consistent, that is episodic, and that is continuous, but the end is in sight. They don't want to play a campaign where it's like it's just going to go on forever, indefinitely. The campaign wants to have like this campaign does and will have an ending. We are going to finish this campaign. The promise that a campaign is not going to peter out, it's not going to die to scheduling conflicts, is very enticing. And like it's like the idea that we're really building towards something. This campaign will have an ending. We found that was really popular and successful. So that kind of sustainable length campaign where you can see it will run, it has a course that it will run, and then we'll end, and then we'll start something new.
And are these typically modules that you're running or homebrew or mix of both?
Oh, it's both for sure. So I will never run a game like as it's written, even if it's like a pre-written module that I'm running, which is a lot of what I do. I have people who come to me and they say like, I'd really like to play through this module or this adventure path, and I'll say great, and I will run it for them, but no way in hell I'm running it exactly as it's written, especially because players love to come to the table. They love to put their own spin on the story. They love to come up with interesting backstories and ways to tie themselves into the world. And sometimes they'll have goals which aren't exactly aligned with the way the module is written. And I would always rather play toward goals that my players have than what's been set out for them in the book. So yes, I will absolutely run a module for you, but if you demonstrate the faintest hint of interest in taking it in your own direction, I'm going to latch onto that and I'm going to ride that, because that is the recipe for engagement, is actually not in an illusionary way, actually giving the players the agency to change and affect and influence the world. So yes, a little bit of both, and usually it starts as one and turns into the other.
And how many players do you typically have in a session?
I 5 or 6 usually. We used to go up to 7 back in the day, and 7 really strains, I think, the amount of time in the spotlight that a given player can get. And I personally believe 4 is the true sweet spot. For most games, there are some games that start to break down even at 5. And for those games, I'll cap them at 4 or 5. Like when I run Blades in the Dark, for example, I'll cap that at 4 or 5. But for most games, for games that are built around large parties, I find 6 is a healthy enough balance. And then if people want to book a more private table for just them and their friends, and maybe it's 4 or 5 friends, that's like a different service, basically, because I split it into two. There are two types of game. There's these public drop-in campaigns, which are campaigns open to everybody. Anybody can drop in or out of the campaign and play through it, skipping if they need to miss sessions. And then there are private campaigns, which are either established groups or groups that have played together in a public game for long enough that they're like, let's get something just for us, and they all go in together on a private campaign. And then that's when I really start to get into the homebrew and tailoring it to my players, because I'm not as concerned with spotlight sharing on a session by session basis, because I can make a whole session that's dedicated to 1 or 2 players, and everyone else at the table knows that they're going to get the same treatment as the campaign continues. Whereas in a drop-in, more episodic campaign, everybody's got to get the sort of same amount of time in the spotlight.
Do you charge differently for those two types of games?
Yeah, I do. So I'll usually do 25 to or $20 to $30 a seat for a drop-in campaign, and strangely, it's not because those are easier for me. In fact, I kind of think they're harder, but they do require they're sort of an entry point, but they are the entry point to sort of what I do. Is I want to make it affordable and sustainable to drop in to play in a way that that you can try it out, that you can dip your toe in and not get overwhelmed. Whereas I do charge for a little extra, 150, 175, 200, even up to $300 a session, depending on a lot of factors, actually, that for more private stuff, because I'm putting more of my creative energy into that. I'm tailoring it more. So drop-in campaigns, they tend to be a little more by the book. But nothing can stop me from customizing a campaign to an engaged and avid player who has strong goals, and expresses themselves in game. Nothing can stop me from altering things to cater to my players who really want to express themselves in the game. But I will dedicate sort of more prep time, more creative energy, more customization to private games in general.
And so I know that you're on Start Playing. Is that kind of your primary spot, or do you, like for the private games, do you tend to do some of that kind of like on your own in contact with those groups?
Yeah, start playing is I would not call it my primary spot. It's kind of my secondary location. My primary the primary way that people get to me is usually by word of mouth, or referrals. I and like sort of cultivating a clientele. I would say start playing games is like kind of like the top of my funnel. It's like probably the easiest to access. And to that end, it is kind of insane that I don't have a website yet. I absolutely should have one, and I'm working on that, but I am criminally lazy, and the way that I have been doing it is working for me right now. So I've got two campaigns on start playing games right now, which sort of serve as the way in to my games. And then once people are sort of in my orbit, I find they're much more likely to transition to a private game, or like ask me to put something together for them special for like one shots or events, or like little mini campaigns, or like birthdays or parties, stuff like that. So start playing most of what I do is sort of off of my personal Discord, that like once you play with me, like you're on the Discord and now you know what's going on. Now you're sort of in contact with me, and if there's anything like you want to put together, like I'm there to help you make it happen.
Sure, that makes sense. So start playing is really just kind of like you said, the top of the funnel to get
Right.
people in. And what have you found for systems in terms of like what people are interested in playing, what you tend to run the most of?
Oh yeah. So without a doubt, there's the elephant in the room. Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is the biggest moneymaker for sure. Like if I need to fill a game and I need to fill a game fast, I'll put up like a public like a 5e campaign up, and that'll reliably fill seats. But I have been experimenting for a long time with getting Blades in the Dark games up and running, and I have finally gotten the knack for it, and I want to do more of that. Just because I think one of the reasons that Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is like is so popular, especially as a pro GM, is because it's actually one of the higher prep games out there on the market. Like prepping a game of Dungeons and Dragons is like noticeably more difficult, more labor intensive than prepping many other systems which I've run. But I do have a lot of sort of like improv chops, so maybe that's that talking. But I think Dungeons and Dragons is a little more resistant to improvisation than many other games that I've played. So while I'd like to sort of transfer more of my systems, like more of my games out of Dungeons and Dragons into other things I've seen success with, like Monster of the Week is pretty successful. Blades in the Dark, Wander Home, I've seen quite a bit of success with. I would love to. I've tried Stars Without Number, but I haven't been able. It's hard to sell a sandbox, right? I've found most people they want something more linear for like a professionally GM game. They want me to be sort of putting my mark on it, giving them sort of a little bit of authorial flourish as a GM. But I think it is difficult to break out of 5th edition because in other systems they're not as hard to GM. Like so if you need someone to GM Blades in the Dark, I don't think that's as difficult. It's not as labor intensive as prepping 5th edition.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why I'm always drawn to other systems is because it's just running the game tends to be a lot easier and there's a lot less you have to think about typically. But yeah, them being such a huge market share, it's understandable why most people would want to play that.
Right, exactly. People want to they want to play they want to play the big name game. They want to play this game with this massive community that has like all these that is like essentially has a lifestyle brand going for it. Like it's got a movie now, and they want to like see what the hype is about. And a lot of the appeal of a professional game master is I'm bringing like 15 years of experience to delivering that like kind of that polish, that high prep kind of like I'm going to play the hits. You're going to go in a dungeon. You're going to fight a dragon like and deliver on that fantasy of that people come to the table for. And it's hard to like and because it's difficult to pull it off, there's always going to be a market for it. It's a blue ocean basically in pro GMing because like a home game is good. A home game is good, but you can make a like a truly with like experience and craft, you can make like a truly great session. Like it's just a lot of work.
And do you have tips or tools for kind of elevating your sessions to that next level?
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. I talk about this all the time, but I think my secret weapon, like my Swiss Army knife, is that I play with so many people that I can, by observation, with like, if I present you with a kind of open-ended scenario and I get to observe how you play with it, like how you toy with it, I can tell what kind of play, what kind of stuff is gonna jazz you as a player. So after maybe playing with someone for an hour and a half in like the first half of the session, I can sort of figure out like, oh, okay, all right. So you're all about sort of the mechanics. You're all about the mechanical side of the game, and you've built a character to be very effective. I need to throw you something that like your character can sweep, or that is going to showcase your character's strengths, and you're going to love it. And then you over here, you love to talk to my NPCs. So if I give you like a funny character, like a funny little guy for you to interact with, like I know you're going to love that scene. And then you over here, you love to find secrets and loot and treasures and stuff. So if I put like a little environmental toy in the game for you to play with, I know you're gonna love digging around in there, especially if there's some treasure at the bottom. Like, so that is like my secret weapon is just like by observation, I had sort of accreted this sense for different play styles and who's gonna do what. And that's the one thing that like it's hard to teach. That's the thing that I feel like I offer that I've got that a lot of people don't have is because a lot of people they've been playing with the same table for a really long time. They don't diversify and they have a sort of kind of a crystallized style, but I feel very flexible and fluid and I feel like I can move between game states. Like sometimes I feel like in a public campaign that I'm actually running 6 simultaneous games, one kind of different, like every one of my players is kind of playing a slightly different game and the rules I feel like almost criminal saying that. Like the rules might be different for one player than they are for another. It's kind of like I have 2 siblings and my parents used to tell me like the rules were different for all of you growing up and you complained about it, but the rules were different because you were different kids. And I understand that more and more, not because I have kids, but because I have players. It's like the rules are different for you and you and you and you and you. Like, and I know how to sort of like bring that into like make that cohesive, make it feel like a unified experience.
Well, that makes sense because, if, like you said, if somebody's more into the mechanics or more into the role playing or something, the same rules to both, one might really enjoy it and one might really feel like it's a drag. So being able to pinpoint that is crucial, especially to hook people long term.
Absolutely, yeah. Because people come like that's what keeps people coming back is like that scene that they got, like that moment they were in the spotlight and that scene that felt like it was just for them. And it was. It really was. Like it was a scene that like you're like this is for you, babe. Like this is your moment to shine. And then like typically they step up and it's really great when they do.
What tools do you use to run your games?
It's usually for I have a virtual tabletop of some kind. Sometimes I do love to run like games theater of the mind, but I love to have a virtual tabletop just because it lets me I like to have a kind of a whiteboard that we can draw. And I like to have a chat thread. So I use Discord typically for voice and the chat threads. And for like a lot of people, one of the ways they engage is they're like throwing like GIFs in the chat as we're playing. And sort of you get this kind of a record, this history of the game just by the GIFs that have appeared in chat, which I love. And so like that's a great way also to sort of like keep people engaged and keep them involved in the story even when they're not in the spotlight at a given time. And then I like to have a whiteboard because I like to be able to sort of like draw things or write things down, give players a place to take notes and draw and write. And then so I'll use Roll20 sometimes. Usually I use Roll20 if it's a more theater of the mind game, or if sometimes the Roll20 if the players want a module that's already built on Roll20, absolutely worth it if I don't have to build everything. But for 5th edition in particular, I truly have not found a better platform. It's a platform called Shard Tabletop, purpose built for 5th edition, lets you build stuff, like pulls in maps and images from the web almost effortlessly. Like it's like an all-in-one tool. The character sheet's super intuitive. It like does like it calculates all the stuff for you. It turns like a pretty crunchy game into like a fairly manageable set of like sort of buttons and dials, and I really love Shard for that. But most of the tools I'm using are just my voice and imagination. Beyond that, like I don't do too many like bits and bobs. A lot of people like hang their hat on music and ambiance and art. And I will pull in like mood art for sure. I'll pull in character art and like anything that like the game I'm running provides. I'll certainly share with my players maps, tokens, character art. And yeah, I'll put together some royalty free playlists. But to me, that's not where it's at. Like the ambiance, the bells and whistles, like I think they have their place, but they're not the focus for me. For me, it's all about the play.
I am the person in Discord sending the gifts.
Thank you for your service. The best thing is after a game that I've run that I've been really in it the whole time is to like sit back, take a breath, and scroll through the Akashic record of GIFs that have been like flooding the Discord thread and seeing like, oh yeah, that's the part where we did the exorcism, and like, oh my gosh, that's the part where he almost died. Oh, and that's the cool threat that the guy made. Like it's great.
You may be like the second person that has talked to me about Shard. I haven't used it as a game master, but I have used it as a player, and I think it's probably my favorite from a player perspective, at least in terms of the character sheet integration and just making things
Oh
easier
yeah.
than because I've played with Roll20 and you have to like manually input everything pretty much. And Foundry, I have Foundry, but I don't think I really love how 5th edition specifically is set up in Foundry.
Oh, sure. Sure. Foundry like is like just a hair too complex for me. Like I recognize that that's a powerful virtual tabletop, but it's like it's just a little too much for me personally. And it makes me Shard makes me feel like I think every like, and I know Wizards of the Coast is going to do this, but I think every game, like if you have the budget for it, should invest in like a virtual, like a purpose built virtual tabletop for your game. Like it, like it would take a lot for me to even consider running like a homebrew game of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition on anything other than Shard.
Yeah, big props to Shard. And it's funny because like I said, I haven't heard a lot of people specifically mention Shard, but it is very good.
Yeah, it's like weirdly kind of small for how good it is, especially because it's like it's free and there's a lot of assets that you get just for like signing up.
I forget, do they have like a premium version?
They definitely do, yeah. Yeah. I run games for the guy who runs Shard, who introduced me to it, and I was like holy shit, dude, like you've really got something here. So we play together every week. So I got a little bit of graft going on in terms of my shard account. I run games for him. He slips me a shard account. All is well.
If there's an aspiring game master that was looking at getting into professional GMing, what would be kind of your recommendations?
Yes, I get this question all the time. And sometimes I feel like I'm not the right guy for it because, as I said, like it fell into my lap. But I do have some tips and tricks for getting in. And I think I think start playing games is actually genuinely a really excellent place to start because what you want to be doing is start by cultivating your clientele. To do that, my advice, it's going to sound like really trite and useless, but run great games consistently. And the all four of those words are important. Run, the games have to run. They have to run, they have to go. And in order to for a game to run, you need people in the seats. And sometimes that means like getting some of your friends to fill the seats because people are more likely to join games they know are going to run. And when they see that 2 or 3 seats are already full in a game, they're like, great, I joined this. We've got a party. So if you fill the first 2 or 3 seats of your game with your friends or people that you know and trust, and you know they're going to be good players and they're going to make the experience good and fun, like bring them on, have them fill your first 2 or 3 seats, and then you'll fill the rest with people who are like excited to play a great game. And then you have to deliver, right? You have to deliver the great experience. And that's of course easier said than done. But like I do think like most aspiring GMs, they're like I can do this because I like my players love my games and I have fun playing, and I think most of them are right. I think they are correct. You probably do run great games and your players probably do love your game even if you have imposter syndrome about it. So run your game, develop your voice, like show them what you got. If you capitalize on like ambiance, if you're like it's all about the tone and the ambiance and the music and the art, like that's great. That's not my style. My style is all about like sort of it's kind of performative. It's like very imagination focused and description. It's all about the conversation. But if you're all about ambiance, develop your voice, develop your style. You will find people who love to play that way. Who that's for me. This is what I like. That's what I love. And your games are going to be great for those players. And you'll cultivate that clientele that way. You run a short campaign for them, like maybe 5, 10 sessions, and then great. There's probably going to be some early turnover as you can't take it personally when your style isn't right for a player. As you're getting new players, people are going to try you out. They're going to drop in, they're going to drop out. You're going to get some turnover, but as long as you keep your core sort of filled with your friends who are playing along with you to help you like pick up some clients, by the end of like a little mini campaign, you'll have maybe 2 or 3 friends, 2 or 3 people who've been sitting down at your table every week. And then you can say, great, thanks for playing. I'm going to run another game now. Are you interested in joining? And chances are the people who you've cultivated at this point, chances are they're going to say yes. And those people are now your seat fillers for campaign 2. You've now got 2 or 3 guaranteed seats filled for campaign 2. And then that campaign is going to fill, and then you start another one, and maybe you do the same trick. You bring in some of your friends, or maybe some of those players love playing with you so much that they'll play with you twice a week. I have that happen. I had a client who would like, if I had them available, would play in like 4 games that I was running like a week. So you'll get people who really love to play with you, and like that's where we get to games plural, right? You want to build. You always want to be building and adding more and offering something. I don't have this anymore because I'm at capacity, but basically if somebody wants to get in and play with you, you want to make sure that you have a place for them to do that. You have room for that, like try not to turn people away. And then consistency. This consistency is power. Consistency is what people pay for. Consistency is what people love. People love that there is going to be a game every week. You're not going to cancel on them. Or like if you're going to take a week off, they're going to know like 4 weeks in advance, like that their game is going to happen. And sometimes that means like a player has to miss a session and it's really not the end of the world. Like usually I'll message them and be like, let's talk about maybe what your character got up to while they were gone. And I feel like that's always like a pretty nice consolation prize. It's like, oh, it's kind of like I got a little like private action. I got like, because I'll usually let them like accomplish some stuff like while they're out. But consistency is what it's all about. People want to know that their game is gonna run. So my advice is run great games consistently, which at first outset it sounds like yeah duh but like I try to break it down so it's like here's why all four of those words are important.
Four simple words, easier said than done.
Just run great games consistently if you want to like enter the world of pro GMing. Yeah, obviously. But that's what it takes. That's what I think people should know is that like you want to be prepared to run consistently. You got to be prepared to build clientele, to accept some turnover, to spend probably the first 3 to 6 months of your career just cultivating and finding the people who love the way that you run and finding the people for whom like you are their dream GM because I guarantee they're out there and they want to play with you.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense because as I've experienced different game masters, I definitely am drawn towards certain styles more than others. And it's not necessarily always like the person who does like the voices or the whatever, it can definitely vary drastically from person to person. How has have you changed your pricing and stuff as well, kind of as you've geared up to being at full capacity?
Yeah, without a doubt. Like I usually charge more for games that have fewer seats just because one, I have to. And two, because I feel like you're getting more bang for your buck. Like every time there's one less person at the table, the time that they would have spent in the spotlight gets distributed to everybody else. And so the all the way down to like one player games where it's like it's just you and me. Like everything is going to be about us. Everything is going to be about your character and what they do and how they're reacting to the world and the people around them. And I have increased my prices as I've gone. My still base level, and it's been this way for a long time. The base level, like $20 for a seat at a table of six for like a kind of pre-written standard bog standard game of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, that's been pretty consistent. I still try to keep that as my entry point, but I do try to build from there into like, now would you like to sample something from the top shelf, like something like a little more interesting? And yes, as sort of demand has increased, as I have reached capacity, my prices have like gone up. Like I've sort of realized the value of what I provide and been able to like sort of ask more. And so I wouldn't start at less than 15 or $20 a seat because I think that is the going rate. But I do see people charging as much as 30 or $40 a seat. And I don't know if I'm there yet. Maybe I am, but, but at the end of the day, like I'm making enough money to survive and I love the people that I play with. And I guess I don't want to price anybody out. Like I don't want anybody to feel like now they've played with me for so long and now they can't afford to because I priced them out. So maybe that's sort of what's holding me back from asking for more. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, but it's a consideration for the future if I'm however long I'm going to keep doing this.
And what is I know we talked about like you're running roughly one game a day during the week, right?
Yeah.
Do those tend to be in the evenings, I assume?
Yeah, so this week especially, I'm running one game every day in the evening, usually around 6 or 6:30 Central, and then I have a bi-weekly game that runs on Saturday mornings and a weekly game Saturday evenings, and then I have a kind of sporadic game on Sundays that's like sort of mid-afternoon. And oh, and occasionally on Mondays during the daytime, like sometimes I'll get like some either like they're in a different time zone or they just like happen to all have like this weekday off and I'll get a weekday game. But yeah, it's mostly evenings and weekends. That's peak time. But the great news is because of the way time zones work and everybody's weird schedule works, you could like do I think I could start running a game like in like midday on a Thursday and fill it? Yeah, I think I probably could. I think it'd be a little tougher than usual, but I think I could fill that. The only reason I don't is because I already have a game on Thursday, and I try not to stack myself with double headers too often.
But your typical like schedule is you've got most of the day to either do prep or do whatever you need to do, and then you've just got your one session in the evening
Totally.
for the most
Yeah.
part.
Yeah, so I spend like the early day, like most of what I do in the daytime is like I'm cooking, I'm reading RPGs, like I'm always trying to stay on top of the pulse of what's going on in the industry because I really love the indie like RPG scene and I love networking with those people and making friends with other designers and talking to them. So I'm making TikToks, sometimes I'm going on Twitter and of course I'm prepping my games but like I said, like you can't stop me from prepping games. Like I when I like even when I like go to sleep at night, sometimes I'll lie awake thinking about like the next session of like my game on Tuesday, and it's like it's Thursday, like I don't really need to worry too much about that until Tuesday. I always have some time blocked out before a game to really make sure my prep is fresh in my mind when we start playing. But like I'm ruminating about all my games throughout the week, so like by the time I sit down to prep, there's like a sort of percolated a bunch of ideas that I've cooked up over the past week that are ready to sort of flow forth given what happened last time. Like how would the world react naturally? What does my previous prep demand? Like what does the book say? The book gets a vote, sure, if it's from a book. But yeah, I dedicate usually like an hour of prep time depending. Some games require less. Like my Blades in the Dark game is mostly I mostly what I do in that is like people are paying for how fast I improv in that game. People are paying for how well I know that system and the world that it takes place in. That I'm sort of very facile with Blades in the Dark. Like you could roll up a character right now and I could make a score for you like on the fly. I'm very confident with that system.
That's I wish I was a little bit better with that one. I haven't gotten to play it a ton, but do you find that when you have so many games over the course of a week, do you have a hard time like separating them or like I'm trying to think of the right way to ask this, but like does the prep like interfere with the other ones? I don't know if that makes sense.
I'm not going to say it hasn't happened. There have definitely been games where I'm like, okay, did I do the like did we have a doppelganger? Is this the one that had the doppelganger in it like 4 weeks ago? And they'll be like, what? And I'll be like, okay, no, never mind.
Now there is,
Yeah,
so
right. Or be like, did this character have a French accent? I feel like maybe. And yeah, so sometimes the characters like the characters, the NPCs might run together, but usually no. It's not a huge problem. I would say it was the worst when I was running two simultaneous campaigns that were both Lost Mine of Phandelver, the sort of like starter D&D 5th edition adventure, and some of the stuff the players did was really similar and some of the stuff was wildly different. So like I had to be very careful not to introduce or reference characters that like, oh, that character died in one version of this universe and that character is like the party's best friend in another. So if I reference that character, like they're going to be like they're dead. So that absolutely has happened, but for the most part when my games are separate enough, when they are different enough in theme, and I actually do intentionally try to make sure that I'm giving myself a sort of broad and healthy diet of different themes and genres so that it's harder for me to get confused. So I know if I've got like, oh, we've got a vampire, like a magic vampire in this game, that's probably going to be my Blades in the Dark game. Or that was a ghost character, that's Blades in the Dark for sure. Or, like Oh, that was a pirate. I know which game that was in. Like, so yeah, I do try to like diversify, both for my benefit. Like, it's more interesting and fun for me if I'm doing something different in every game. Maybe it would be like more efficient to run the same kind of campaign, but I think I would just wither if I was running the same campaign like 4 or 5 nights a week.
Yeah, I was going to kind of ask about that if you recommended kind of separating your campaigns out. I could see one shots being good for repeats
Sure.
because you don't have to worry about the like week to week crossing things because it's just
Yes,
the one session. So having a one shot in your back pocket might be okay,
totally.
but yeah, I can see having yeah, running three different versions of Lost Mines could get a little hectic.
I actually keep a catalog of one shots that I love because I've run them so many times and they've never been the same twice. So one shots like they age like fine wine. Like, I think one shots are actually extremely difficult to pull off well. A lot of times they can feel rushed if they're too packed, or leave you wanting more if there's not enough. So a well-written one shot, a one shot that that not only feels satisfying at the end of the session, but I've run it multiple times and every time it's gone like a little bit differently. I keep a catalog of those in my back pocket because they are worth their weight in gold to be able to pull out a one shot that like I always love to see how this goes. It always goes differently. And what I'm looking for is actually that it's not the same every time, that it's not replicable, that it really leaves the space for players to do something different, because I bet you could make it your signature, make it your style to run the sort of same few campaigns and get really good at running those same few campaigns. I don't think I could do that. I think I would waste away creatively if I was delivering the sort of same thing every time. But that's me. Like, if there was someone who thinks that they could make it, like, I know there are people who have like made a career, an entire career, just running Curse of Strahd. They run Curse of Strahd. They run Curse of Strahd over and over again. They run it 6 nights a week. They run it 2 times a day. And if you keep very good notes and you can keep all those straight in your head and you've got that down to a science, more power to you. But I would die.
I'm curious, those one shots are those ones that you have found and have run, or are they ones that you've created?
Both. I have one of my own that like I never ended up publishing, and I probably should. Like, basically it was all ready to go and I was all ready to publish it, and then the OGL thing happened and I was like, I don't, because it is a D&D 5th edition adventure, and it's a D&D 5th edition adventure that I would have had to publish on DM's Guild, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to give more oxygen to Wizards of the Coast, and so I sort of resigned myself to like, this is just going to be an awesome one shot. Maybe I'll rewrite it for to be system agnostic someday. I think that would be fun. So I definitely have a few that like I have that I'm like, these are great. I've written them like, and they are honed to a razor's edge. And then I have quite a few that like I've run enough times that like I love what happens in these games every single time. I think let me see, Murder on the Eberron Express is a really good one that I love. What other ones have I loved? The oh man, I'm like blanking on the name now. But everything out of the Arcane Library is gold. Like, there's nothing. I don't think the Arcane Library has ever published a one shot that isn't like fantastic. But I can't. Mask of the Worms. That's like an Edgar Allan Poe themed one. Very good. And then it's not a one shot, but I really loved The Haunting of Willoughby Hall, which I think is more of a 3 shot, but like I keep that one around. I keep that, I keep that thing on me. Like, it's great. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm glad we were able to get some name drops there for the folks listening to go check those out. I will be going to check those out as well because I enjoy running one shots and they just fit my schedule a little bit better currently. We will see how that changes though. I do think it would be a lot of fun to do professional game mastering full time. Can't quite swing that currently, but definitely am looking at dipping my toes into it. So I
Hey, well, best
appreciate
of
you.
luck.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate you coming on and talking about it because there's been a lot of great, insightful information here. Is there anything else you want to say about professional GMing before we wrap up?
Yeah, it's kind of like I think it's interesting that pro GMing has kind of been seen as a little controversial, like in some circles. It's like some people are very offended at the idea that people would like pay for the service, but like in terms of bang for your buck, like for I feel like for $20 a seat, it's like that's like the cost of a movie ticket nowadays. I think it's like almost it's a great value, and I think it also demonstrates the sort of the weight of expectation that has been placed on the sort of contemporary GM responsibility. Like GMs are expected to do labor to make their games great. And a lot of times it is a labor of love. A lot of times, like I still run games for my friends for free, of course. And I put the same amount or more work into those games, like in terms of like labor and thought and man hours and prep and planning, as I do into any of the games that people pay me for because I love my friends. Of course, it is a labor of love. But like I feel like we underestimate like the amount of work that GMs out of like the love in their hearts are doing for their players. And as I've said, like it's not as intensive in all games as it is in, for example, a kind of traditional game like Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. But like it's hard. It's like it's hard work and it's emotional and it's draining. Like there are sessions I come away from feeling like I've been hit by a truck, like just like putting it all out there. And I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. Like if you especially like if you don't have a group or it's hard for you to like find people on your schedule or if just the prospect of like running the game for yourself is too intimidating, like I don't know. I'm glad they're out here. I've played with pro GMs and I think they're I think they're great. I genuinely think most of them that are out there are like I'm sure there's a bad egg or two, but most of them are out there. They really do have something special. They have something to offer. It's a blue ocean. Go out there and swim in it.
Well, back to your point on, $20. I mean, I think the escape rooms and stuff that we have near us are like $30 a person.
Sure, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just for an experience, especially escape rooms are typically like an hour that you're locked in there too. You don't even have like 3.5 hours to hang out. So yeah, I would definitely say that there's a lot of value there. And like you said, there is a lot of work that goes into it, and like you, if you can make a living off of it, then you can run more games.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's there's more games out there in the world. There's more people playing. There's more conviviality, more sitting at the table together. Like I think that's a good thing.
Well, Sean, thanks for coming on and giving us all this great information. Do you want to let everybody know where we can find you?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me aboard. You can find me on TikTok at Scene4, SCENE_FOUR. Same place on Twitter. And well, all my YouTube videos are scattered on multiple channels right now, but I'll look to consolidating them and maybe getting an actual real website some point in the future. Would have been nice to have one so I could plug it here. But other than that, you can also find me on startplaying.games and you can always contact me there or direct message me on Twitter or come hang out on my Discord. See y'all around, I hope.
Thanks so much for joining, Sean.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.